Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast where we talk about The Nanny, the hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. I am Shawn and Pasquale here with my co-host,
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And this week we're talking Having His Baby, season 3, episode 10 of The Nanny. I don't know why I said it with such gravitas.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it. It got me very present.
Someone's gonna die.
Tonight on 60 Minutes.
Tonight on Dateline.
Yeah. Well, Fran, and this is the episode where Fran considers having a baby through a donor.
Having my baby, what a lovely way to say you care. Is that what the title is an allusion to, you think?
I actually don't know.
Having his baby. I think that's what it is.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
It's gotta be.
And so this episode starts off with something which I thought was pretty interesting, which is Fran gets some mail, and it is the birth announcement of Danny and Heather Biblow's baby. And there had been reference to the fact that she was pregnant during the shopping addiction episode.
It's like the only continuity this show really does is like hardcore tracking of the Biblows.
Yeah, like they can't keep track of the Sheffield's family's ages, but we always know what's up with Heather.
And honestly, it's like, why do a random hairdresser spinoff show? Why not give us the Biblo show? I know we talked about this when we covered it.
The Biblo show!
But why not give us the Biblo show? And it's about like Fran's ex and Heather Biblo running the bridal shop. Like it writes itself. We got to get Peter back on because I need to specifically ask why did you guys not do the Heather Biblo show?
Well, but what I'll say, though, about this episode is that I thought an interesting thing was that I was expecting Fran to have some kind of like meltdown or big emotional reaction, but we have truly, truly seen that Fran has totally turned a corner on the Danny chapter of her life. She doesn't have any negative feelings. And if anything, she's like, looks at it and she's like, "Aw, Niles, like, doesn't this make you want to have a baby?" Like, you know, she's over it. And if anything, I think she ends up sending them a little gift, like, you know, early in the episode as well. But this kind of kicks off this episode where it's Fran starts to get a little baby fever. Mm-hmm. But not before making a lot of jokes about how hairy this baby is.
It's a really ugly baby. They establish and then reestablish that the baby is ugly. Like a little, maybe like a little dog baby. Like that. There's an illusion that it's like very, very hairy.
Yes. And Niles goes, "What's his name?" And then Fran opens the card and goes, "Judy."
Yeah. So it's a weird little dog, like girl baby.
Yeah.
Like a hairy girl baby.
Yeah. And well, Fran's like, "Oh, Niles, don't you ever just wish you could have one of your own? You know, wash them, put them to bed, put Vicks Vapor Rub on their chest when they're sick." And then Mr. Sheffield walks in and Niles goes, "I already have one." And then we cut to the next scene. And I thought this was really funny. Mr. Sheffield approaches Fran and he's like, "Miss Fine, like, I decided you're doing such a great job. Here's a gift certificate to Saks. Like, take the afternoon and go on a shopping spree." And she's instantly like, "A famous person is coming over, isn't there?" Or like, "Is there going to be a famous person?" And he's like, "Yep." And I just laughed that she wields so much power in the house that he can't just tell her to leave or to like not be around. He has to sort of like somehow trick her and lure her out of the house.
Yeah.
But she instantly, like, she sniffs it out and the doorbell rings. She answers it, and it's actress Donna Dixon, who is it's Monica Baker, the movie star, played by Donna Dixon, who she's Dan Aykroyd's wife, which is cool. But I felt I was going to say, like, who's famous for being Dan Aykroyd's wife, but she's really not. She was in Bosom Buddies, which was a huge sitcom in the 80s. And then she like played like Wayne and Garth's hot blonde dream woman in Wayne's World. That's like probably a big role for her. She keeps popping up when Garth hears, "Oh, dreamer, I believe." Like it's that scene. She plays that girl. She like appears several times, and then I think they get together at the end of the movie. I totally forgot about that. She and she's like a very beautiful woman. And we were just talking about this actually before we started recording. It's like really nice that she got with Dan Aykroyd, because Dan Aykroyd is like, he's kind of an awkward, geeky guy.
Yeah,
and they've clearly had this. Yeah, he's a nerd, and they've clearly had this very happy marriage. And they actually got together on Dr. Detroit, which is how Fran met both of them. So they've been like, decades long friends. But it's again established that she's Monica Baker, famous actress. And Fran gets to talking to her in the living room, like before Mr. Sheffield joins. And Monica Baker reveals that she has a baby, but she had the baby through a sperm donor. And Fran at first was like, oh, I don't think that would be for me. I basically want a husband so I can, blame him for making me miserable. And Monica Baker's like, well, I thought that too, but then I decided I wanted to have a baby before I started looking like my mother. And that very much resonates with Fran, because she had said earlier to Niles, like, I want to get married and have a baby before I start looking like my mom. And this line made me laugh. Monica Baker's like, oh yeah, like, I went to a sperm bank and I chose a rugged type, a donor who loves adventure and dirt biking. And Fran goes, wow, do they have any Jewish guys? but she's also, so she's like clearly intrigued. This is planting a seed in her mind.
Would you ever do this?
If I wanted a kid badly enough, I think I would. Sure. Yeah. Sure. I mean, I might adopt. I like the idea of adoption too.
Yeah, that's what Elizabeth always says when asked for something like that. I'm like, if I couldn't have kids, would you want to like do something like this? And she's like, I think I'd rather adopt, like at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's probably something really cool about seeing like your dad's eyes or something, or like your so-and-so's mannerisms in a little kid. But I mean, hey, what if that kid just ends up looking completely like that sperm donor's family, and they'd be a virtual stranger anyway?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of that is all learned behavior anyway,
I guess so. Well, sometimes you got a little clone baby.
I mean, like my niece acts very similarly to me, but like
a total asshole.
Like a total, she's really entitled. She's a real entitled piece of shit, that kid. No, she's great, and she's like a little like weird funny baby. So like, I mean, I guess that's an argument for like, because like I don't live there, so like I don't know where she learned that. But like my sister, my mom, like everyone's like, yeah, she's like a little weird little clone of you. It's very strange.
Yeah, you're like, she certainly didn't learn it from them. They're not funny at all.
They're not funny. They're so boring.
Also, Funny Baby sounds like the prequel to Funny Girl.
My sister's an accountant. How funny could she be?
That's true. Yeah, I like it.
But Funny Baby. We should write an animated prequel. Funny, how'd you get so funny?
But anyway, long way of saying that, Fran is kind of starting to mull this over. Yeah. And in the next scene, she's in the kitchen with Val, and she's talking it over with Val.
I loved this scene.
Yeah. Well,
I thought it was funny.
We had because Gracie's there too, and they're getting her ready for some sort of like Thanksgiving Day, like pilgrim's costume. And at one point, Fran's like, Gracie, do you think I'd make a good mommy? And Gracie goes, yeah, it's easy. And then she goes, Fran, like, why don't you have a husband? So clearly, Madeline Zima is doing a Sylvia impersonation.
She nails it too.
She nails it, and the audience loves it. And then I noticed in the next episode in the previous episode rather, she did a Fran impersonation, or the one where Mr. Sheffield's mom came to visit. So I'm like, did they just realize that like this little girl was really good at impersonating Fran and Sylvia, and now they're just like writing it in?
Yeah. And it's great. It's hilarious. Yeah. I loved that, but I really love that happens, and then they start talking about Fran and Val starts talking about being pregnant, and she's and Fran's like, I don't know, like if I can like do it, like give birth is essentially what she's saying, and Val's trying to like calm her down.
Yeah.
And in the background between them is Niles like murdering a turkey. Like he's like shoving his fist inside of it and like violently yanking its guts out.
And then like grabs some scissors to like cut into it.
He like slaps the turkey really hard. Yeah. And then he picks up like these giant shears and he's going to like snap into the guts of the turkey.
Yeah. Basically simulating what it's like when a doctor delivers a baby. It was like horrific.
It was great. It was very funny.
Yeah. But, throughout all of this, Fran still is kind of like, I think I want to look into this. And did you notice that Val had this line where she goes, well, like it's your body, like it's completely up to you. Do you think that was like a slight progressive, like,
yeah, it was. Yeah. It was your body, your choice.
Yeah. It was slipped in. It was obviously, in the context of if you want to have a baby, not if you want to have an abortion, but it was still, that sort of felt like in a good way, like a dog whistle,
I agree. Yeah. It was a positive dog whistle, which listen, not all dog whistles can be bad because sometimes they bring actual little dogs.
That's true. Sometimes those dogs might bite you.
True, but sometimes they might just be little cute puppers. Adorable little puppers. The woofers.
Anyway, long way of saying, Fran, we keep going on these tangents here. Audience, we insisted we keep it short and sweet today. And if anything,
it's short and sweet. We're like blowing through this episode. We're only like 12 minutes into this thing.
Okay,
we're absolutely rocketing through this.
Okay, so let's keep talking about
because now they go to the sperm bank.
Well, wait. Do they go? Oh, yeah. Is the next scene the sperm bank already? Okay.
Val and Fran go to the sperm bank, and we get this is also like a great scene because we're sort of continuing with the idea that like Fran is going to do this, and
we're like, look, she's looking into it. She's figuring it out if it's for her.
And so they get handed a menu basically of like donors, and we get like a good back and forth between Val and Fran as they like flip through the donor book and kind of like judge the various men. And like Fran has a great line where she turns to the nurse and she's like, so is this like everything on the menu, or do you have like a catch of the day?
Yes. And so the nurse kind of clearly wants them out of there because they're pretty annoying.
The show loves to send Fran and Val to any scenario where they can like just be slightly less classy than everyone else and then like really play it up with like, and then they have her do the like, she gives the laugh and it's great.
It was also funny because at the beginning of the scene, Val goes, wow, it's so strange, like just having this sperm bank right here in the mall. And Fran goes, it used to be a Siemens Furniture. They only had to change one word on the sign. And then they decide to take the menu home with them because the nurse is sort of like, why don't you just take this and go? At which point the button on that scene is they, instead of leaving through the exit, they clearly accidentally walk into a donation room where a man, we can assume, is masturbating into a cup.
Yeah.
And Fran,
what else would be happening in there?
You're right. I don't know what else. But so Fran runs out. She goes, oh my God. She's like, Val, are you as embarrassed as I yet? And then she looks and Val's still in the room.
She's like, Val.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good bit.
It's a good bit. And so then we cut back to the mansion. Mr. Sheffield is in his office with Niles and Cece. Niles and Cece are bickering as usual, like ribbing at each other. And Mr. Sheffield basically is like, we don't get any work done because the two of you never shut up. Yeah. And there is this nice little moment.
A very concerning beat, at least to me, from a story standpoint, where he's like really worried about them not making money. He seems like genuinely stressed and they're not taking it seriously at all. And for like a brief moment, I was like, oh no, are they going to lose everything? Is that what this is building to? And then I was like, oh no, this was all just a setup for him to be like, stop bickering, you two.
Yes. But it was funny because even though they'd been totally at odds with each other, like just a second before, as in Niles and Cece, as soon as Mr. Sheffield yells at them both, they both go, excuse me for living. And then, like Niles is like, well, I guess I'll just leave. And then they kind of like grumble out together, which I thought was kind of like an interesting little shift in their dynamic where even though they still fight, it's slightly becoming like they're a little alliance now.
It's a partnership.
Yeah.
Is this the one where they're listening in, or is that the next one?
No, it's this one. It's this one.
It is this one. Yeah. This was great. I loved all of this.
Yeah. So they like grumble out together.
Yeah.
And then Fran enters and he's like, oh, it's fine. I'm very busy. And she's like, okay. I just want to run something by you. And he's like, I really don't have time. And she's like, what would you say if I wanted to have a baby? And then he's instantly like, he like presses the buzzer and he goes, Niles, hold my calls. And then he goes, why? And he's like, mind your own business. And he goes, sorry, sir. And then the line goes dead, but then we hear it pop back on again. And Niles is whispering, this is the button you press so that we can hear them, but they can't hear us. And he's like, or is it this one? And then Cece's like, no, it's this one, you jackass. And then Fran just goes, it's the red one.
and then Mr. Sheffield pulls the plug out from under the desk.
Yes. But just this idea that like, they all eavesdrop on him constantly. But that's this idea that like Niles and Cece have gone, even though like they still are like, they're not enemies anymore. It's almost like they're frenemies now. So they're at least trying to team up to hear what's going on.
Ooh, frenemies. That's great. You should copyright that.
Yeah, I think that and humble brag.
Oh, rest in peace, Iris Whittles.
Oh, I know. But so anyway, Fran is like, I'm, not getting any younger and I'm thinking I want to have a baby through a donor. And he's like, oh, okay.
Donor, I barely know her. That's what he says. Wait, can we also establish real quick? She's talking about a donor that she wants, and it's alluded to that she's talking about him, but she says he's 41. And I went, wait, Mr. Sheffield's only 41 years old?
No, but this is the thing. Sometimes he's 43, sometimes he's 42. Now he's 41. I think he was like,
but no matter how old he is, Mr. Sheffield's only in his early 40s.
I think we've talked about this before. I like early.
It blows me away every time.
Yeah. He seems a lot. Oh, God, that is weird. You know what? Even though I was just about to say that's not weird, that's your age.
Dude, basically. I'm turning 41 on the 27th of this month.
Has it already been a year since your 40th?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I literally, Shawn.
Toria, we're on season 3 of this podcast.
Hand to God, I would have said we had that party 3 months ago. Oh my God.
And we just started doing the podcast, but we haven't because we're on season freaking 3.
Oh my God. That's insane. Now we need to take a beat so that Shawn and I can just like consider our own mortality.
Stare into the middle distance and consider. That's what happened to me. As soon as he said 41, all the sound dropped out and like this high pitched, like kind of whine started in the back of my head. And I just heard like 41, 41, 41, 41.
Wow. Well, and I'm older than Fran.
Yep.
Because we established she's 33. I forget.
Yeah, 32 or 33. Yeah.
But yeah, that's very bizarre. He seems, I would put him at 47.
Yeah, me too. And I went, oh, he's like closer to almost 50. Look at that gray hair. And then I like turned and looked in the mirror and I went, and I just let out like a guttural scream.
God. And then, eventually when we redo this podcast in our 60s, we're going to have we're going to outpace them.
When we redo
this. When we revisit it to see like how age and perspective has shaped.
When we do the reunion episode.
Yeah. The Mr. Sheffield Redux.
Yeah.
We've aged, they have stayed the same.
We're getting the cast of Mr. Sheffield back together. What do you mean? You mean you and Toria are doing another episode? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're bored. Our grandkids don't call us.
Yeah. Mine don't speak to me. But so, where are we? Okay, so Fran is telling Mr. Sheffield that she is considering doing this through a donor. She is clearly just wanting to get his input on what he thinks about this as an idea. Mr. Sheffield, as an egotistical person, is assuming that she is implying she wants to ask him to be the donor. Because she's like, he's handsome, creative, successful. And so he's literally like, I'm going to have to give this a lot of thought, Miss Fine. And she's like, oh, great, because I really value your input. And he sort of has a like, oh, brother face. So she leaves and he literally goes, he swings open the door to his little balcony and he goes, Niles, what do you think? Because Niles
is just standing there holding a leaf blower.
That's not even on.
Yeah.
And so in the next scene, Mr. Sheffield is agonizing about this with Niles, and he's just like, she clearly thinks it's me. And Niles is like, well, what makes you think that? And she's like, well, she said handsome, successful, creative. And Niles goes, did she also say,
egotistical?
Yeah, cocky, couldn't find the laundry hamper if his life depended on it. And then he's basically like, Mr. Sheffield's like, you know what? No, we're going to need to call someone who can just rationally talk some sense into her.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
We instantly cut to Niles and Mr. Sheffield in the living room with Sylvia, who is having a meltdown as usual, going like, I can't believe my own daughter didn't tell me I'm going to be an illegitimate grandmother.
And Niles goes, can I get you anything? And she's like, lunch.
Yes.
And then he starts to walk out of the room and she's like, oh my God, also no fish.
Yes. So then Fran comes home and she's like, Ma, like, what are you doing here? And Sylvia's like, they've told me your little plan. And, I just want you to know that, you think it will be easy peasy having a baby on your own, but like, that's because you're used to 3 grown kids. And, this is way harder than you think it's going to be. And, she basically is trying to talk her out of doing this on her own.
Yeah.
And at this point, Monica Baker comes back and she's holding her little baby. Oh, well, actually, I'll save one of my favorite lines involves this, but I'll say it later. Yeah. But so she's holding like this maybe like 3-year-old little blonde boy. And she's like, oh, my nanny's sick. So I had to bring my son, Zach, with me. And Fran's like, well, I can watch him for the day while you and Mr. Sheffield, go on your meetings. And she kind of turns to her mother and Mr. Sheffield. And she's like, because, some people don't think I'm capable. So that sets off this funny little part of the, I don't know, we're getting near the end of the episode already.
Yeah, basically we get a montage where the kid is in one of those little kid cars where he uses his feet to pedal around the room.
Well, first she's feeding him SpaghettiOs and she's covered in SpaghettiOs, and then she puts him in a little kid car and he destroys
then he runs around the whole house and she chases him and a vase falls and then we get a scene where she's singing to him to try to put him to sleep, and every time she sings, he cries, and when she stops singing, he goes to sleep.
Yes.
Which honestly was really good acting from that little kid. He kept smiling. It was clearly a game that he liked doing, but it was really cute how he did it every time. She even goes and he goes, eh.
Yeah, it was really, really funny.
Yeah.
Singing a baby to sleep, but in the reverse, where your voice keeps them awake and your silence lulls them to sleep. We also had a really funny Cece joke in here because when he's in that, it's one of those little cars that a lot of little kids have where it's your feet are the engine. You literally just walking around with your feet.
Yeah.
It has the Flintstone
It's
music.
A Flintstone car. Yeah.
Yeah. But at one point while he's running around the house, he stops in front of something very suddenly and there's a sound effect of brakes, car brakes. And then we see from his perspective, Cece kneeling down and she just goes, Coochie, coochie, coo. And then he literally his hands goes to the side of his face and he screams in terror. That's her effect on small children, which I loved.
And then did you notice that as soon as he starts screaming, she drop the friendly act and she rolls her eyes at him screw you.
I think she even mouths, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
It was so good. And so then we have the end of that montage and, Monica Baker's back and Fran sort of hands him back off to her and says goodbye. And she's like, oh, and she's talking to Mr. Sheffield. She's like, he's so adorable. And Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, so I guess that, solidifies your decision to have a baby, right? And she was like, yeah, I'm actually not going to do it. And he's like, really? And she's like, yeah, because like I had a really great time with little Zachy. She's like, but when I was putting him to sleep and he was cuddling against me, I looked around and I realized there was no one to share it with. And I thought this was actually a really sweet moment. He was like, I know what you mean, Miss Fine. Because like, and I was like, oh, sometimes we forget, like he is a widow and, it's just really heartbreaking when you think of it in that way.
Yeah, it was pretty sad, right?
Yeah, like just having all these moments that then you don't get to share with that other person. Like it honestly, like it does like kind of like it hits me in the stomach sometimes in this show. But she's like, so I want to do this like with a partner when I finally do it. And then he's like, well, Miss Fine, I have to say I'm relieved. This would have been awkward for me. And she was like, wait a second. Do you think that I was asking you to be the donor? And he's like, no. But he's like clearly then kind of disappointed.
Yeah.
And then, there's a funny little beat where she's like, oh, like Mr. Sheffield, like if I'm going to have a baby with you, like you're going to have to do it the old fashioned way. And he's like, marry you? And she's like, oh yeah, that too. And then it's like kind of like a funny little Yeah. Oh, and there's also a great beat where when the kid had been in the little car, he had knocked over a vase. And in this last scene, she's like, Mr. Sheffield, that vase out in the foyer? And he's like, oh, the Picasso? And she's like, yeah, never mind. Like the kid had destroyed a Picasso.
Yeah.
Okay, and like that was the episode. I feel like we breezed right through it, but
it was a a pretty simple episode. There wasn't a lot of moving parts, but there was some really funny stuff, which we should talk about in segments.
Yeah, but I will just say this. I think it was nice because it was fun. Yeah.
Yes.
I suppose.
I almost threw us to segments. I had to hit the brakes on the segments button. Go on.
It was nice because it was very funny and light, but also some, serious character, emotional interior stuff when you actually take a step back. An episode about if Fran is gonna potentially have a baby and like where she is in life. So I think I like it.
Yes. And I thought even specifically at the very end, that exchange between her and Mr. Sheffield was sort of like the first time it's like that they've kind of, he's like, marry you? And then you see him sort of like consider that for a second, and then she's like, yeah, sure, that too. And it's cute. It's cute. Yeah. It's a really cute bit. All right, segments. And now segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Shawn and Toria.
So one of my favorite lines is when Fran is considering having a baby, she's like, Niles, what do you think? And he's like, oh, I don't know, Miss Fine. I don't think I could envision you in a moo-moo. And she's like, ugh. Trust me, when that baby comes out, he'll have Dawn and Karen Control imprinted on his forehead, meaning that she'll be
wearing control top pants the whole pregnancy.
Yeah, pantyhose to the point where the baby will be imprinted. It made me laugh. And then my other favorite laugh out loud line was when Monica Baker comes in and sees Brighton. She goes, "Cute son," and Fran goes, "Oh, he's not mine. If he were, he'd have big hair and a lifetime membership to Weight Watchers." Just the idea that like you're already knowing that about yourself and your offspring
and your lineage.
Yeah, made me laugh.
Yeah. I liked both of those. My favorite bit in the whole show though was we kind of didn't talk about it, but it's right before Mr. Sheffield is going to talk to Niles about like more in depth about this whole baby thing. Niles is in the hallway dusting like this old painting, and Mr. Sheffield's like in his office, and he's sort of like is hiding, so like he's like trying to keep a low profile, and he just kind of whispers into the hallway. He's like, "Psst, hey, Niles." And Niles like stops dusting the painting and sort of looks at it as if to like question, did the painting just talk to me? And then he sort of like looks around like, oh no, am I going crazy?
Well, because then the Mr. Sheffield goes, help me.
Yeah. And then Mr. Sheffield goes, help me. And Niles is like, what the fuck is happening?
But also, I was like, Niles is not that stupid.
I loved it. because it was like, okay, what is the scenario playing out here? Is Niles think he's really being spoken to by a ghost? Is Niles like what I thought he was playing was like Niles is worried he's going insane.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's why I think I liked it so much because that was what I got from that performance was him. The way he looked around was I felt was selling more of like, oh no, am I losing my mind? Like that would be bad.
Yeah. It was a very funny beat. And it was one of those great, like, there was a way to do that exact scene with no jokes, but I love the little extra joke in there.
Yeah.
For Yiddish, did you have any more? Sorry.
No, that was it. I'm out.
Yeah. Oh, and we already talked about it, but I loved the scene where Cece and Niles were trying to eavesdrop and failing. With like the buttons.
Yes, that whole exchange, that was probably my favorite exchange, but we had kind of covered it. That whole back and forth. It was the real capper on that was Fran going, "It's the red button."
Yeah. And I didn't hear any Yiddish in this episode. I didn't catch any.
Same.
Yeah, no Yiddish, which is okay. It happens. Sometimes we have episodes chock full of Yiddish. So
yeah, that's sometimes not.
Out.
Yeah.
Okay. For Nanny trivia, I looked up what the average price of a Picasso sculpture would be.
Oh, right, because the vase, we should say that we find out in the end, the vase that he broke was a Picasso.
So, okay, according to
which is ridiculous.
Well, but we always say how much
ridiculous,
like how many assets are in that hole.
But also, why would it just be? It's like not secured in anything. It's just like on a random like, I don't know. He has kids. Seems like a dumb way to display it. Okay, but go ahead. So how much was that vase worth?
Waspy kids, and they don't do anything crazy.
True.
Well, according to the auction tracking firm ArtNet, the average auction sale price of a Picasso sculpture in 2014, at least, which is a while ago now, but it was basically $120,000.
Yeah, but 2014 is still like 10 years after this show or whatever.
Yeah. So, well, I'm thinking like, we can assume that vase was
like between $75,000 and $100,000.
Yes. Or maybe in today's money. Yeah, well, maybe that's why he has it out. So like that.
Yeah, that explains it. Because that's really not that, based on what we've seen them imply that he does have, like, that's actually not that much. Like $100,000.
I feel like
a couple million, that would be like a lot of money.
Now you've really gone down how it's like when you're around people with money, you start thinking like you have the money and you're like, that's not that.
I mean, what I'm saying is like, if you had $2 million or more, $100,000 of that 2 million you'd still have like $1.8 million.
So you're not impressed. I thought I was like, wow, that's a lot.
I mean, it's a very, like, I wouldn't spend that amount of money on anything. I don't think, like, certainly not on art. But I get why, like, now I get more why, like, they were like, yeah, sure, it's like on display, but it's not like priceless.
It's not like a $2 million sculpture.
Exactly. Okay. Or like a $15 million, like, Picasso original or some crap,
That's fair.
Yeah. Fair. Because that was my first thought, was like, oh my God, like, it's got to be worth millions. But like, yeah, it's $100,000. You're like, all right, well, I mean, okay. I guess if you can afford it, you can afford to replace it.
Do you think that the writer's room had this exact conversation?
Doesn't that cost less than a Tesla? I mean, right? $100,000 is less than a Tesla costs.
Yeah, but if someone crashed my Tesla, I'd be upset too.
Tom has a Tesla.
Yeah,
Tom could have bought a Picasso, is what I'm saying.
He made a huge mistake.
I know. We should tell him. All
right. And then for the Fran or the Cece, I said, I think we're both the Frans. I think kids really like us. From what I know,
I'm definitely the Fran. I have baby fever, baby.
So I don't think I have baby fever. Well, no, I think I am the Fran, where it's like, if I have them, I know now it's not the right time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love little kids.
I know you do. I forget why that got brought up in my house the other day, but somehow I forget what it was, but Elizabeth was like, is Toria good with kids? And I was like, yeah, dude, she's always like with her like weird cousins and nephews in Australia and shit. Like she loves babies. Toria loves babies.
Well, but you know what? I never really thought about it until they started popping up in my family. I was never that little kid that imagined them. But it's like when I
love them as like an aunt who gets to come for a couple days and dip?
I'm sure that's part of it, but that very morbid part of me was definitely like, oh my God, if anything ever happened to my sister and my brother-in-law, like God forbid, like I would 100% take my niece. Like, you know, like it's not like literally when I left her, I was like crying in the airport.
Sure. Yes. You love them, but that's easy to say and different than like, do you think you could spend 3 weeks alone with those children and be like, yeah, I still want to have kids? That's the real question.
Oh,
because it's tough. I'll tell you, it's tough. Like I went home and took care of my niece and was like playing with her, and it was also fun. And then like one day, Shane was like, I have to go to work. Would you want to watch? And I was like, yes. And she's like, are you sure it's the whole day? And I was like, yes, done. Let's do it. And like, I showed up at like 9, and honestly, by 3, I was like, I want to die. Like, I want this to be over. I love this kid, but I want this to be over. And then Shane got home at 5, and I was like, bye.
Like, I had these same thoughts. And I think, you know, the key is what I said when I came back. I was like, that's why parental love has to be so strong, like on an evolutionary level, because if you didn't love these kids on an irrational level, you could not actually deal with what they were doing to your life.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, think about like how many like people abuse their kids because of that. Because even on the parental level, they're like, ah!
Yeah, but like to put up with the fact that like you're sleep deprived, you truly do not have a moment to yourself. Like I remember I was so naive thinking that like we could do the podcast while I was visiting my family. Like this kid slept in my bed. If she didn't sleep in my bed, she was like, you know, literally trying to break into the room at, like every minute of the day. Yeah. She would walk in while I was peeing. Like you truly
you have there is no such thing as like getting like that's every time I go home I'm like I'm taking the week off of work. I'm not going to be able to do anything while I'm there.
But it's like, you know, I was like, yeah, that's the key. Like the reason that we don't like just like leave them on the side of the road is like that irrational biological like love. Otherwise you'd be like, this fucking sucks. Like
screw this little creep.
Because they really do like you're driven kind of insane and your life is a shit show.
All right. Well, that's our thoughts on kids. Yeah. What else you got, Toria?
I think that's it.
Oh, right. Because we did Fran or Cece. That was Fran or Cece. Yeah, all right. Well, listen, this was an episode that I think we both really enjoyed. It was funny. Like it wasn't overly complex, but like it was a winner. This was a winner. Season 3 so far, I really like. I think it's interesting that we're getting more of an examination of like where Fran is. Like this is also like I think the first episode where she acknowledged she's like in her 30s. You know?
No. Remember we got those started. Oh, where she acknowledged,
like I'm in my early 30s. Yeah, because she's always like, oh, I'm 28, you know, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, you know, from that standpoint, it was also pretty interesting. I like this one. You do. What about you?
Yeah. Well, it sounded like I was lying. You know, they say your voice pitches up when you lie. Yeah. It was fun. No, I liked it for the reasons that, you know, we stated. It was fun and light, but really hits some good character interior life stuff.
And if you like this episode, let us know on social media. We're at Mr. Chef Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. No one ever talks to us on Twitter. You all seem to be on Instagram. So maybe I'll just stop giving out the Twitter. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. No one cares.
Yeah, they're Instagram people.
If you're on Twitter, tweet at us because we're lonely and insecure. All right. And on that note, also go rate and review the podcast, iTunes, or rather Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all the things. And all the places, and love and hugs, as always, to the people that are subscribers to our podcast on Anchor and are giving us, subscription fees every month. It's incredibly, incredibly nice. I hope we're not letting you down. I'll write more songs I feel like that's the only thing I can contribute back. It's like, oh, write a new weird song for something.
A new word jingle. Yeah, there's more of that coming up this season for sure.
Yeah, more jingles. There is?
Well, next week they're going to get their special.
Oh, but that's not next week because this will have aired weeks after that already happened.
Oh yeah.
So this is going to be confusing. Now we have to do something for the next episode we record. Okay. Great, Toria. Thanks a lot.
You've just recovered from the last one.
No. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.